Joe.
Hey,
Good
there
to
you
see you,
are.
man.
You too.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you yesterday, but it's nice to see your face. Even nicer to see your face today.
Yeah, good to see you, buddy. It's been a bit, hasn't it?
It has been a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I was having a little technical difficulty here, which I always do since I don't even own a laptop. So
You don't own a laptop?
I don't own a laptop.
You're on a PC? Or are you on your
I ju-
phone?
Just on my phone. Yeah.
That's all you have? You don't even have a computer at all?
I
Are you serious?
I have a tablet, which I have to,
Oh,
if
that's
if
okay.
if I have to sign like a legal document or something, I can do that. I'll get one. I'll get one. But I just wanted to see whether the technology actually takes before I get one.
I think I think the verdict's out, man. It's gonna take. That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Oh my God. Oh shoot. Everyone's gonna have a robot in their house before you get your laptop.
It probably will. I'll have a robot with a laptop. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Oh man. And I'm
Oh,
sitting here in front of like 5 computers with 12 monitors.
dude, I was at Andrew Tischler's place, and it's like you stepped into Star Wars when you walk into
Oh
his
dude.
studio. I mean, it's cameras and lights and action and my word. Yeah, it's a world I have a lot to learn about. So,
Yeah, that guy's
but
something else, man. He is
but
something
I'll
else.
get there. Yep.
I can't
Force
get
of
over it.
nature.
I know, no joke. I don't understand how he does it. He's just brilliant.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
so
you both are in your way.
oh,
Yeah.
thanks, man. Yeah, but somehow he makes it money. He
Well,
turns his
that's
brilliance into money. I haven't figured that one out yet. But
well,
anyway,
you're
yeah,
put
so you were out in New Zealand, huh?
yeah, I was just out that place is it's otherworldly. That's the only
I want to get out there so
yeah.
bad.
Yeah, you have to see it. It's it if I would have known how awful the flight was, I might have said no, but
How long of a flight is it?
oh, for me it was 3 flights and 32 hours or something, but with layovers.
Are you freaking kidding me?
I wish I was kidding. I wish. I mean,
Oh, I'd die.
it was brutal, man. But once I got there, and the work, I taught a workshop and then painted. Andrew and I painted together, and we did some filming. And anyway, it was just great. We had a great time, and the place is there's nothing that's on a man scale. It's all on a God scale out there. And I thought
Hmm.
Alaska was vast when I painted there, but uh, Alaska, the valleys are, the mountains are so much further apart, and they're so close to each other, in New Zealand, that the sense of scale and it's cathedral-like nature of everything,
Are
you
these
know.
huge mountains or
They
just
are, yes.
really?
Yeah. And
What's
they're
the
just
climate
everywhere
like
you look.
there? You're
It
in
was
you're in summer now over there.
Yeah, I got well. There's I guess an issue with the ozone there, and I even with sunscreen, I got fried to a crisp.
Oof.
And then we had days that were so cold that I could have worn a skull cap and gloves. So
Really?
yeah, it was very, very varied. Just crazy.
Is that
But
normal for New Zealand?
I I guess so.
Huh.
It's not for the faint-hearted. Students or had to put up with a variety of weather, so it's
Hmm.
quite the mix.
Yeah, I always wonder because he's originally from Texas. I always wonder what I should just ask him, I guess, but why New Zealand? Why he's staying out there instead of coming back to the States?
Well, I think you can check with him. I mean, he'd be the man to ask, but I think he grew up in Australia is what happened.
Oh, I thought he was from
And
Texas.
yeah, but his dad ended up working in Australia, and I
Oh,
think
okay.
so. And then I think it was the move to after that. So
Oh, gotcha.
yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. So how's the painting going? I see that gorgeous painting back behind you.
Oh, I've started one from one of my studies from Yorkshire. And I've got a study up there on the easel. It was one of my favorites from New Zealand that I think I want to do a really massive painting from.
Hmm.
It was one of the first days painting with Andrew just after the class was done. And it was, you know, how once in a great while, grace smiles upon us. And I'm only not even jokingly say it was probably partly exhaustion and desperation because it was the first thing that we were filming together. And, you know, I don't like being on a camera. Uh, and this thing, it just came off my hand. I don't even know how it happened. I mean, it
Hmm.
just,
Isn't that funny how every now
uh,
and then it just works out?
yeah, I mean, it just, you know, and it was every stroke counted. There was nothing repainted. I finished it in about an hour and 40 minutes, and that never happens.
Really?
And yeah, and it was violent weather. I mean, clouds boiling over the mountains, and I mean, it was Frederick Church type stuff, you know.
And you still nailed it.
Well, like I said, I think every once in a while, you know, what do they
Huh.
say? Even the blind squirrel finds a nut, right? So,
Yeah, the funny thing about painting is like with a portrait, I still can't figure out. Well, there are some criteria. You know, somebody with a big old beard is always going to be easy because half the face is missing, right?
yeah.
But in general, I still haven't really figured out what makes some people harder than others, and it might just be what you're going through with
Yeah,
the
I think it's,
landscape. It's just the day. It's like it's not even the person as much as the
oh,
artist.
I think you hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I mean, after just watching the Olympics and your parts of the Olympics, and you realize that how much of this is it's a mental game, and
Mm-hmm.
we psych ourselves out, and one of the things that I think very strongly about for me is that the most interesting paintings have the most unselfconscious connection to subject with the most transparent craft.
Okay, so we talked about this yesterday, and just in
Yes.
case any of my viewers are as dumb as I am, explain again what you mean by unselfconscious, because I
Well,
didn't
because
really get it.
let me put it this way. I think the bane of my existence as an artist is when I become too self-conscious. I
Okay.
start thinking and with that self-conscious ego creeps in too, right? And that's always a constant you know, a battle for me because nature to me is always so much bigger than I am. And granted, you know, I'm connected to it. I'm part of it. I understand that. But when I start to think too much, I start to, there's no flow. You lose flow. And I think when you're unself-conscious, if you think about your children when they were little, right? A child, if they are undamaged, are the most beautiful things on the planet to witness because there's this unself-conscious connection to the world.
Hmm.
And I think when an artist creates, when a dancer dances, when you know, when a downhill skier can give over to the mountain, or a skater, you know, is not so worried about the next jump that they are so in flow that they move with it, to me that's when the magic happens. That's when the unself-consciousness allows you for a true connection to whatever it is that you're doing. The second you become self-conscious, you're adding a step in between you and that thing. You're thinking about it, you're second guessing it, you're too aware. And it's that in that particular sketch I study, i was I was so tired. I'd already been painting for 17 days straight. And that the shields go down. You know, you can't, you know,
Hmm.
you can't be self-conscious anymore. You're too worn down, that part of things. And so you just react. And in that glorious reaction, when the skill is in service of that connection. And for me, the when I say transparent craft, I mean, I don't like florid, self-congratulatory kind of brush making in a painting for its own sake. I find it irritating, frankly.
Hmm.
So, and what the guy we're going to be talking about today, George Inness, One of the things I've always loved about Inness's work, and something I endeavor to do in my paintings, is to, when I'm making a mark, it's in service of saying something specific every time. If I'm painting a particular type of cloud, well, what kind of cloud is it? Is it moisture laden? Is it thinner and airier? Is it same thing? If I'm painting snow, is it wet? Is it dry? Is it crunchy? Does it squeak when you walk on it?
Dude,
Right?
this is the stuff that changed my life that you talked about in the original podcast that we did.
Yeah.
That completely changed the way I paint outside, what you're saying right now. Because there are so many flowery painters out there that have these, I think you would put it, I can't even say the word right. Calligraphic, right. Marks that, fine, whatever. But until I started thinking the way you described, where I'm really analyzing the qualities of the thing and aligning the mark to that thing.
Yes.
Instead of just showing off what I can do with my dexterity in a brush.
Yeah.
Like then that's when it changed, when I started doing that. It's such good advice.
Yeah, it's just one of the things I thought was really interesting about the great American illustrator, Howard Pyle. He was always dubious of his own facility, somebody once said. He was very facile, and he didn't like slippery things. And for me, that idea of digging and having never being so certain or so clear about how you're going to make that mark, because you're not saying something like something, you're trying to say that thing. Right? You could throw a lot of words. I mean, the art world, especially art, people's artist statements are often incredibly florid, kind of over the top, meant to impress, right? And I'm not interested in that. And I don't know if we talked about this, but I had this beautiful example of this many years ago when I first came out to Minnesota to teach at the Minnesota River School. Pat and Jeff Jurdy were the owners of the school, and they were lovely to me. And they said, "Come on out and teach, and teach anything, everything. We'd love to have you." And so I was teaching, maybe at the time, 3 outdoor classes, composition and design, studio painting, a number of things. I had one woman who took every class that I had, and she was probably late 50s, early 60s when she started. And she had the least amount of native ability of any student I've ever had. She had no natural gifts, and that's rare, right? Usually you see somebody and they have an eye for color, or they have an eye for proportion, or whatever. She had none of those things, but what she had was this absolute love for doing this thing. And so she took all my outdoor classes, and we painted in a little field across the street from the school, a little fallow field. And the students just bitched and moaned about it constantly. "I hate this field, blah, blah, blah." And I'd say, "Guys, it's not the field, it's you. It's about sensitivity. It's not about subject." So this one woman, quietly every week, she'd come, and we painted right until Christmas. I mean, they're out in their snowmobile suits,
in Minnesota.
Yeah. So that's a great story. And it was this woman and another woman, and they were both the same size. They were very tiny, and they were in these real big snowmobile suits with this real pointy, hood. And they're both painting, and they're kind of moving like this, and all you see is this like kind of odd,
like a
silhouette.
nub.
Yeah. And so gnome. And so a police car rolls up, right? Just as I'm walking up behind him to critique him. And he rolls the window down real slow, and he leans in and he said, "What planet are you from?"
That's hilarious.
That was awesome. Anyway, to go back to the serious part of this. So this woman painted these paintings of the field in the winter. And we had a student show at the end of the year. And it's the only time I've ever done a show of student work. And she had these 2 paintings, maybe they were 11 by 14. And they were beautiful, but they weren't technically beautiful. They were spiritually beautiful. They were connected.
Huh.
And I'm telling you this because everyone walked straight across the room to look at her paintings. And it
Huh.
was, she loved what she was doing. She loved being there. And
That
she
right
put
there,
that,
that right there is her gift. That's her talent.
yeah,
She,
she put that love into the work, and the work you could feel it when you stood in front of
yeah.
it, you know. And the same thing, you know, that we were just talking about with making marks, like we're going to talk about Inness today. Um, there was a search in the painting, right? And I guess the best way I could say this, I would prefer search over certainty. How about that?
Okay.
There are a lot of artists that know what the mark they're going to make before they make it.
Right. Because it's worked before.
That's right, and they have a certain calligraphy that works,
Right.
and
Right.
that they're known for, and that and so you can use a hammer for a lot of things, but you don't necessarily want to,
Mm-hmm.
right? In other words, there's a right tool for the right job, and there's a tool that you can use for a job,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not the same thing. And I think what happens with that ego kind of mark making that goes on in a picture is it ends up becoming more and more about you. And then when I'm aware too much of you and not what it is you're trying to communicate, I find that boring.
Is this what you mean by self-conscious?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So to
Yeah.
be truly void of ego and self-consciousness, it's almost like you have to just get out of there, forget about yourself, and have a reverence for the subject.
Yeah, but you don't have to be. Nobody's egoless, right? I
Right.
mean, the bottom line is you're facing a canvas and think you have something to bring to the world. That takes ego, right?
Right.
But what I mean is, I think there's a balance, right? And
Mm-hmm.
when the balance tips, and for me, it's like I said, I just don't like clever.
Right.
I like honest,
Hmm.
right? When somebody's, you know, I used to work in advertising with account executives, and they were almost all too clever by half. Their teeth were too white by half. They
Hmm.
were too familiar by half
Hmm.
with everybody, and I just find it kind of smarmy and kind of irritating, frankly. And uh, the honesty, I'd rather hear my child tell me about their day at school than the average poet read their own poetry when they're self-conscious in the way they read it,
Hmm.
right? It's there's if they I think if we're too aware of how we're being seen, right, that's when we do become more self-conscious. And I
Hmm.
think if there's a way to connect to your subject, and that's what I meant by transparent craft, meaning the craft is in service of what you're saying. You're struggling to make your hand say this thing or this thing or that thing. You're not saying, oh, I've said this something like this before, I'm going to say it that way. And sometimes when you look at people's work, they can be really fine painters. But if I look at all the paintings and they feel the same and don't feel different, there's something going on there. Sometimes people have a certain, like I said, a calligraphy, a certain way they, you know, the way they manipulate paint,
Hmm.
with Inness and with this woman that was in my class, there's this honest desire to say something, and in that desire to say something specific, you force your hand to move differently.
Hmm.
That's the way I would say it.
Can a layperson see the difference?
A lay person, if they're sensitive, can feel the difference.
Hmm. Yeah, that's it. That's really interesting. So, one thought that came to mind as you were talking is, do you believe that, I think I already know the answer to this, but do you believe that it's important to just forget your audience completely when you're out there painting?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And at least just for me, you know, other people certainly might feel very differently about it, but I don't. I think, the way the world is right now anyway, you think about what's valued today, what
Mm-hmm.
we value, and how shallow it all is. And so the idea of chasing anything, the older I get, it becomes really abhorrent. I just find it, I'm not interested. you
Yeah.
know, and I'm sure I could do a lot better if I played the game better, if I had been more manipulative in how I chose things or made decisions. And it's just not, you know, I worked in advertising. I know what that world looks like. And it's that same kind of thing. And to me, painting, as lame as this might sound to a lot of people, painting has always been very sacred. And in that sacred nature of it, there's something that needs to be protected. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you protecting one's integrity in terms of their creative integrity is a really important thing if we're going to do this for a long time. It's a good thing. It's an important thing anytime, but
Mm-hmm.
just to maintain any kind of artistic integrity for years and years and years, and keep the joy and the search and the interest and the curiosity, you know, and that for me, that lack of certainty, which, you know, I'm not certain about anything. I'm not a fan of dogma of any stripe, religious, political, artistic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't need to hear your platitudes. I can only tell you what I think and why. This is why the handful of times that we've done podcasts, I've really enjoyed it. But you're always very kind. And you say, Joe, is there anything you feel like you need to take out of here? And I think generally I've said no. It's just my opinion. If
Mm-hmm.
people are offended by my opinion, so be it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind that you feel how you feel. if you don't
Yeah.
agree, if you don't agree with me, right? But I
That's the way
think
it
that,
should be. I mean, we all should be able to be free to have our opinions without causing offense.
well, I just think it's everybody's offended about everything right now, and
Mm-hmm.
so I just, you know, again, don't have the patience for that either. That's why I say, look, it's you and me having a conversation. It's just being recorded,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm just telling you how I feel about this, because to me, there's something much bigger when you paint from life that's possible for all of us, and self-consciousness and ego have a tendency to chip away at that and erode it to the point, after a certain point, that there's nothing left of that, right? When an artist becomes a caricature of themselves, which has happened. I mean, all you have to do is be a student of art history, which I am.
Mm-hmm.
I love art history. I'm constantly reading and studying in the 20th century, and then the 19th century, the 18th century. What happened and why? And I think, you know, if you look at the Italian painters, the Macchiaioli, that is a group of painters I'd never heard of until my friend Andrew Lattimore told me about them 40 years ago. And it certainly weren't in any of the art history books.
Mm-hmm.
And there were this amazing group of Italian painters and there was something really big that was happening all over Europe and in Russia in the late 1870s, 1880s. There was this huge explosion of Renaissance that somebody should do a deep dive into the why this happened, because it happened in Italy, it happened in Russia, it happened in France, where you had these groups of painters. Whether it was Russia, you had the itinerants; whether it was in Italy, you had the Macchiaioli, and all their work was different, but it was really beautifully done and sensitive and connected to subject somehow.
Yeah.
And then when you go through the Pitti Palace in Florence, you see where the influence of Cezanne hit Italian painting, and people just stopped looking. They
Hmm.
flattened the picture, flattened the picture plane. Form became somewhat irrelevant, and there was a stylistic similarity that settled in over most of the artists who were in this, you know, desire for relevance, to staying relevant,
Hmm.
you know, and the people stopped looking, right? And so one of the things that I'm a big proponent of when I teach is say to people, look, guys, you know, I once in a while I'll get a student, and it could be a mentoring student. They'll say, "Look, I only have a certain amount of time. I want to leave my job and I want to become a painter. Can you help me make a living doing this?" And I say, "Absolutely not." I said, maybe lead you to feed your soul. Whether you feed your mouth is up to you. I have no guarantees for that.
Mm-hmm.
Plus I'm not I'm not going to give you all kinds of clever uh, uh, advertising tricks, or this is, if you just do this, you're going to get your this many followers and build your career and all. And I get it, and I know people are out there and they're trying to figure all that stuff out because they want to make a living doing this. But I don't know, anything that leads me away from the purity of the intent, and I think being commercialized, right? The second you start thinking about painting as a commodity, it changes how you think about the painting.
Yeah.
It's especially if that's how you're thinking about it when you're creating it. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it is a very different thing, right? And it's just like, well, how many times is a gallery going to say, look, if you do that painting or something like it 10 times, we could sell all of them,
I've had
and
that happen so many times.
so we all have,
Yeah.
and so I don't judge people who do that. I can only tell you that anytime I've tried to compromise, it's never been a good thing for me.
Same.
Right? It's just not in my best interest.
Mm-mm.
And so
I think eventually smart collectors and the big collectors, the ones who are paying a lot of money, are generally pretty smart. Most of them didn't get there by accident.
right.
I think they can see through it, and they can see authenticity in the art.
Yeah, but look at the art world today. Whether it's the robots that were in Art Basel with the president's face, little robot dogs with presidential faces on them walking in squares, or the taped banana, or the,
Yeah, fair
well,
enough. Yeah, I guess
you
I'm
know,
just thinking about the clients that I know personally and respect. But
well, you have people
there's
that
something about laundering money too, though. I think a lot of those people might be smarter than we think, and just buying the thing that they know they can turn around and sell for more.
well, I'm sure. Like I
Yeah.
said, in the end, we have, it's a matter of you having to live with yourself. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
And the older I get, and having lost so many friends in the last few months, um, it was really strange. You start thinking about life a whole lot differently.
Lost so many friends, not to death, I hope.
Yeah, yeah,
At
yeah.
your age?
Yeah, but I mean, there was some of them were older than I. Some of them were former
I'm sorry to
students.
hear that.
A couple of really good artist friends passed in the last 6 months,
Hmm.
but it just, I don't know. Again, this isn't advice to anybody. I can only tell you that the only thing that matters is the love you give and the love you get. And if you put love into your work, then you're a lucky person. You're fortunate,
Mm-hmm.
and you put the care into it. Whether people receive that or not, who knows? Like I said, we're in a world that you know that embraces the Kardashian model, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the shinier the thing is, the more expensive car, and we're also dealing with a time, not to be negative, but people's attention spans are growing shorter and shorter and shorter, and that's becoming a brainwave thing now. Our brains are reforming now because of it. So really looking at a painting requires deliberation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope there'll be a resurgence in that. I hope people will come around, but who knows? You
Hmm.
know.
I got to back up a little bit. Something I've been thinking about related to what you had said earlier, with this idea of sort of flamboyant, self-conscious mark making. Uh, Correct me if I'm wrong, but I probably shouldn't phrase it that way, but it's too late now. You you must believe that it's important to have beautiful marks. I mean, it's not as though you're painting with your elbow, or are you completely unconcerned about the look of the mark,
No, they're not.
except to
No,
describe the thing?
No, I think you're being a little extreme. They're not mutually exclusive.
Right.
See, there's a beauty in to me in a utilitarian mark that's in service of saying something specific, just
Yeah, I
like
agree.
in writing, right? Sometimes you'll make a mark that, and if when I'm in the zone, sometimes my hand does things that are completely outside of any kind of conscious thing, and your hand twists and turns or lifts and lands back down, and just the way you've loaded the brush or dry paint or wet paint, something happens, and that's outside of all of that. And so this mark is in service of saying something specific, and there's a beauty just in that. That's why I love industrial landscape, which a lot of people don't find terribly interesting. I think a lot of industrial industrial design has an inherent beauty within its utilitarian nature. That's so it's a beauty because it's made to serve something. So it's different than just making something that's meant to be beautiful. And so I love beauty, and given the opportunity, I surround myself all the time with it
Hmm.
because quote Emerson, which I love this quote. He said he'd put great works of art and statuary in everyone's home, because when you're around things of great beauty and a higher order, that it elevates us as individuals. And I believe that inherently.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, but there's, like I said, there's a certain way, sometimes clever way, people make a mark, and it's very entertaining, and it's performative.
Right.
And I shared that quote with you, didn't I? From Millet. Did we talk about Millet
I don't know.
yesterday?
Share it again. You mean yesterday on the
Yeah.
phone?
Well, yeah.
Oh, well, tell me again. I don't remember though.
Well, I love Millet because Millet has this gentle honesty in his work, and this sensitivity to getting at something without undue flourish.
Hmm.
And he said when he was a young student, he came from Cherbourg, and the town had put together a subscription for him to study. Back then, the smaller towns would often do that. They would say, "Look, we have this artist, this person of talent, and they'll honor the town if they make good." So they sent him, and he was a plowboy. He was a big bull of a kid, very quiet. And he went to Paris, and he wrote, when I went to Paris, I was told to go to the Luxembourg to see the Davids and the Delaroches,
Mm.
which of course were the order of the day, right? He said, everywhere I saw wax figures and marble visages. He said, going to the Luxembourg gave me my antipathy to the theater. To paint well and naturally, I think one should avoid the theater.
Hmm.
And he was talking about the overt theatricality of the paintings.
Yeah.
And this, because they were, imagine if you think of the salon was like modern day cinema. The paintings got larger. You've seen all those images of these guys hanging these giant paintings. The paintings got more violent. They got more sexual in a lot of cases. And it
Hmm.
was all to grab attention, right? In a
Hmm.
room full of paintings, how do you get somebody's attention? And then you have somebody like Millet, for me, like Inness, who we haven't even talked about yet, or like Bastien Lepage, who I love, right? Bastien Lepage painted a goose girl, right? But it was
Hmm.
some goose girl that he knew in his little village. And he was so sensitive that he could take something that was so basic and everyday and treat it as something special. And then, the whole host of idiots that follow start painting goose girls because they think that's the answer. The
Yeah.
answer is not the goose girl. The answer is being connected to the
That's crazy.
subject, you know?
I'm
So I
trying
think
to find
there's,
the Bastien Lepage goose girl here.
but that's what, people were, what, it was just his sensitivity. I guess that's all I
Yeah.
would say. He had, and Millet had that too. And there's this gentle honesty in approaching the work, when they're painting, and there's something to me in the utility of those honest marks that I find incredibly beautiful.
Just out of curiosity, is this the Goose Girl you're referring to,
Let's see. I
or one
can't
of
see
them?
it.
Oh, you can't
I
see it. Oh,
can't.
you're on your phone. That's so tiny, man.
Sorry.
This
Yeah.
is gonna be tough.
Yeah. If it was binoculars, I couldn't see that
Oh
right
man,
now.
this painting by Bastien Lepage in the Met. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, Joan of Arc. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
curious which
But
one
the
was the
wood,
Goose Girl.
the wood carrier, they're all, they're wonderful. The guy taking a load of wood out of the forest with a little girl running to grab a flower, behind him. This youth and age thing, and it's just fantastic,
Yeah.
But again, it was that. So, and that's just a taste thing, I think.
Hmm.
You know, I prefer bald honesty to a clever lie
Yeah.
any day.
I just have to take a minute to thank each one of my generous patrons for your part in keeping this podcast going. I could not continue to do it without you, so thank you so much. If you're not a patron yet, but you love the show and you listen regularly, please consider becoming a patron. It's really easy to do and it doesn't have to break the bank. Just head over to theundrapedartist.com and click on the link Be My Patron on Podbean. And then choose a monthly donation amount that fits your budget. It's that simple.
Well, good.
All right. So you already mentioned it a couple times that we're going to talk about George Inness. Did you get a chance to see the one with Frances Bell that I recently did?
Not yet. No,
God, it was so good, man. She's something else. Frances Bell.
I love her work. Yeah.
Not only that, but when you get a chance to watch it, if you get a chance to watch it, there's at one point where I comment that when she's a lot like, frankly, you guys are very similar in this way. She describes the art in this unbelievably poetic way, but then when you add the English accent, it's just perfect.
Yeah.
Anyway, was she my first? No, she's my second. Carlo Russo is first. So you're number 3 in this new series, Undraped Idols. And I asked you yesterday if you'd do this, and I really appreciate it. So this is one of your idols, George
Yes.
Inness. And I am excited to hear more about it because I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not seeing it yet. You're going to convince me. Yeah. I mean, I like it. I like it, but you love it. Like, I mean, you are,
Yeah.
you just clearly adore this painter and his work. And
I do.
I'm interested in the case that you make for it. It's not that I don't like it. It's just, I'm not sure I understand it yet. So this will be fun. I'm excited.
That's fine, and you might end up liking it less. I mean, who knows?
I don't know.
I can, I mean, all I can do is tell you what I think is amazing about what
I
he's
have a
doing,
feeling you'll convince me because I respect you a lot as a landscape painter. And if you like it, I'm like, okay, I need to know what it is that he's seeing that I'm not seeing yet. So I'm excited about this. So let me go ahead and pull up the monitor. Now, some of the images you sent me, I don't have the titles or the numbers because of the way it kind of came across.
Well, that
through
was
text.
No, I had sent them everything I sent you through text. I wrote the number and title under each one.
Yeah, I know. It's a long story, but the way I had to get it into the program, I lost that information. So we're going to have to play a little bit here.
Oh,
It's okay because you've only got about 12 images. It's not a ton. So we'll work it out.
well, this is Homer, so this is not. This is I sent you yesterday. This is not.
You sent me this yesterday though. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's right. You sent me this
While we were
in
chatting.
our conversation. That's
Yes.
right. Oh yeah. Well, I am not a student of art history apparently.
So the first one was the portrait of him, just a black and white photo of Inness.
Okay.
I think it's always a good idea to start with the artist.
You sent me a portrait?
That was the first image I sent you.
All right, let's look it up because I don't have it.
night.
Hold on, give me one sec here.
It was just a black and white photo of Inness looking
It was
wild.
just a photo. I hope I got all the work.
Yeah, it was the first one. I sent you, I think, 11 or 12 texts yesterday. And last night, because I was prepping all afternoon and into the evening, just trying to find some images that kind of define the different periods in his life.
Right. Well, let me see here. I'm going to save this image into the same folder here. Um, okay, it should be popping up here. Hopefully I didn't miss too many. Okay, this is it, or something
Yeah,
like it.
that's it. That's the man,
Okay,
the myth, the legend.
all right, all right. So
Right.
tell me about him. What is it? What is it about him that appeals to you?
Um, he was all about he was all about spirit in a work of art, and the power of the spirit of the thing that was in front of you. And he felt a cold correctness that the photograph, and he said this way back in 1870, a photograph could do it far better. So, why try to do that? And he was, you could see just by looking at him, he was a fiery character.
Yeah, he's
Um,
interesting.
and he actually got arrested in Italy for not taking his hat off when he was at an audience with the Pope in Rome,
What?
and ended up rapping one of the carabinieri, one of the police, over the head with his cane. And he was a character. There was a really funny a description of him, and I don't know when it was penned, but it said, kind of long, dark, curly hair, 5'5". What did he say?
He's only 5'5"?
Yeah, it was very small.
Really? So he's like a
uh,
chihuahua, just kind of got a big bark.
yeah, like, and I think it said like irregular face or something to that effect. So,
He looks like a
but
mad scientist to me.
well, he was a mad scientist. His gift and his curse were the same thing. Was his passion and his impetuousness,
Hmm.
both of those things. He was incredibly impetuous, and he would get all excited about an idea, and when he did, there was absolutely no stopping him. And if there was another canvas in the studio that wasn't even his, he would take it and paint over the top of it. He did that with a couple of his son's paintings, which is just
That's harsh.
awful. Yeah. And so, but he would, he when his paintings hit, they hit on a chord that's really powerful, and it's very similar to what you and I spoke of yesterday. What I love about Hopper, there's this plausible fiction in the work. It's all supported by truthful color and truthful drawing and all that kind of stuff. But the other subjective choices that he makes in there to bring about harmony, they're all personal choices.
Hmm.
So I don't even think he could have repainted one of his own paintings, because he was so, like I said, he was just on fire. There's a great book, if you guys that are out there, it's called The Life, Art, and Letters of George Inness by George Inness Jr. And it's a lot of reminiscence from his son, who studied art in Paris and ended up studying with his dad, about his time with him and how he painted. And he got himself, he did some of the most amazing things, and he did some really unfortunate things. He'd get all excited about a painting, and they'll say, well, what if I did this? And then all of a sudden, that landscape of the day before, the next morning on his easel, it was a seascape.
Hmm.
And he did it with collectors even. I mean, he was, he had a firm belief that he had a right to change any painting of his, regardless of whoever owned it.
You mean
Like
after they owned it?
Absolutely.
This guy's a trip.
Yeah, he was.
Although I actually kind of agree if I had access to it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there's many stories about a collector. There was a painting of his that was going into one of the big National Academy design shows, I think, in New York, and he said to the collector, "Oh, I'm going to run around. Let me run by and pick it up. I just wanted to do a few little touch-ups before we put it in the show." And so the next week, the collector goes to the show, and he's nervously looking in the catalog. He can't find the show. the painting, excuse me. And
Oh my
when he
gosh.
finds Inness had turned the landscape into a seascape.
That's a true story.
Yeah, and he said, "Oh, stop your complaining. I made it better."
What in the heck?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he struggled really financially, and then he made absurd amounts of money. I mean, he was making $10,000 for some of the real giant paintings he did of Italy. You know, these 8 by 12 foot paintings, 8 by 10 foot paintings that he was doing. And
$10,000 in the 19th century.
yeah, in the 1870s,
Yeah, I wonder what that would be today.
tax free. Yeah,
That
and
have to be hundreds of thousands today, don't you think?
he traded a painting for a house.
That's great. Well, that's crazy on multiple levels because it used to be a house was like 1 year's income,
Right.
but still, that's still crazy.
Yeah. So, but he came up when he started, he was he kind of came up in the 1860s, right? 1870s. And at that time the Hudson River School was kind of the top dog in the States here anyway. And so one of the second image I sent you is called the Juanita River. It's O2. And it's very florid, very worked painting. Nope.
Wait, this is what we're going to
That's
do
it.
today.
That's
Okay.
it. That's it. Yeah. It'll be a dance, but we'll get there.
Okay.
But that you can see the influence of the Hudson River School in the early paintings.
But it also has sort of a Corot or Courbet kind of quality to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Good job. You're a good shill. Well, he had a big collector. Ogden Haggerty was his name, that paid for him to go to Paris for a year or two with his family and study. And that same person sent him to Italy for like 2 years, all expenses paid.
Do you think he would have known those two artists, Corot and Courbet? Did they
overlap? Actually, this is exactly what I wanted to tell you. So when he went to France, he fell in love with the Barbizon painters.
Mm-hmm.
And so Rousseau, Daubigny, and Corot were his favorites of that bunch. And if you look at his early work, you'll see that the way he renders out his forms in the trees is very much like Rousseau.
Yeah.
But he hated the stiffness of it. And you'll see that over the course
stiffness of Rousseau or the stiffness of his own work?
Both at the time.
Okay.
But he had to work through that, right? When he was a little kid, I think he had one teacher. I can't remember who it was, a Dutch guy for a very short period of time. So he was largely self-taught. And he was very, very bright. And so I think, this is an example of somebody who's learning to work in a genre, but that doesn't quite suit their temperament, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he felt Rousseau put too much into a painting and added things into the paintings that weren't necessary. And you'll see as we go through the images, you'll see a huge change in his work. He was, after a very short period of time, he was way ahead of his time. And by the time he stopped painting in what was 1890, his work was almost acutely abstract, long before abstraction was even a thing. Because
wait. You mean literally abstract, as in modernism?
His work was leaning in that direction. Yeah, very spare, and very reductive, I guess, is maybe a better way to say it.
But still representational.
Yes, you knew what you were looking at, but the forms were highly, highly simplified. So eventually but in his case, he had to work through understanding what he was looking at. His son said that I can remember Pop would sit sometimes for days out in a field, minutely studying trees and grasses. And he did drawings and he did very beautiful watercolor studies to understand the forms that he was seeing. And that you'll see as we get through the work, The calligraphy that he forms to say one tree is completely different than the calligraphy he's using to say another type of tree. Right. In other words, there was a certain growth pattern to that tree. There's a character to the edge of the shadow shape, which is different on everything. And so when he was outdoors, he was studying very, very truthfully what was in front of him. But then
Okay,
when
but
he
just
got,
to clarify though, you use calligraphy typically in a derogatory sense. In this,
no, it's not a derogatory. It can be derogatory. Overt calligraphy is
okay. So when you say it in his case, you're saying that he's created a
character.
particular character of a particular species of tree that
Yes,
works well. Okay.
the character of the mark
Right.
replicates the character of the thing. Right.
Right.
And so, but I think this type of painting, and this is the reason I want people to see it, because as we go through the rest of the work, it's amazing what happened and how he began to synthesize. But this is him studying deeply all forms, right? And so everything is somewhat micromanaged, you know.
Yeah,
And
everything is in focus.
yeah, yes, that's exactly right. And again, that's that kind of Hudson River School aesthetic, that hyper reality.
Except it's so green. You know, the Hudson River School tends to make things brown. There's a lot of really rich greens.
Well, there is, and I think that's partly him. He was always a rebellious character, but rebellious in a way that suited his own nature, not for the sake of rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually said at one point, because of the Hudson River School, I reject the foreground bush, because they would always have a dark in the foreground somewhere, and the French referred to it as a repoussoir, something to push back, right? To have a dark somewhere in the foreground. And he got so tired of the conventions of the way they were constructing paintings. But I just wanted you to start with this so you can see that he had to start someplace. And so your assertion was spot on. He had been in France for 2 years. And so and he felt that Corot and Daubigny caught the spirit better, but he thought that Rousseau, the honesty of Rousseau's work, he loved, and he felt it was just a bit too florid. And you can see what he's doing here is very much akin to that. And during this period, the 1870s, a lot of his work, you really can see Rousseau in those early paintings.
How do you suspect he painted these? Probably mostly in the studio, I would assume.
Yeah, I think almost all in the studio. His son said that he would work from life outside. There are extant, color studies, oil studies, but there was a lot of watercolors and drawings that were lost, sadly, in a big studio fire. But what did I want to say about that? When he went into the studio, he was like a madman, his son said. Like he would be grasped by a fit of excitement to paint something. And he would just grab his studies and he would just paint off and out of his head and with his studies, combining things. And so I think what you can see here in this early painting is his desire for truth. And like you said, he's not following the brown sauce underpainting, is he?
Mm-mm.
He's the colors are more a little more realistic, I guess, to use for lack of a better term. But what I do like about it, even in its over the top way, if you look at how he's painting the birch tree versus the other trees, he's really searching to say that specific thing. That was very, very important to him.
Yeah, it's just not a generic tree.
No,
this tree is a one-of-a-kind tree.
Well said. That's exactly right. And that's one of the things I really like about that study. But like I said, it's a starting place for this conversation, because you can see Rousseau, you can see the Hudson River School influence. But in a very short period of time, he starts to break away from that. I'm not sure what the next image is. I had 02 was, let's see, actually I have it here. Lackawanna Valley. That's it. Thank you.
Oh, I got lucky. How about that?
Well done. No jumping around. Okay. So yeah, Juanita River was 1850, early 1850s. Lackawanna Valley is 1855.
This is totally different.
All right, let's talk about that. It's a commission. Okay. You know how we all feel about, most of us feel about commissions, I should say. You're grateful to have it, but it's very hard not to be self-conscious when you're painting for someone else's expectation. And so he went out, and last night, what took the time is I actually found the next image is the drawing or the watercolor for this. It's a watercolor study. Yeah, see that? And unfortunately, it's the best reproduction I could get of it. But he went out on
pretty true to it.
Oh, he's really true to it, because that was really important to the railroad. That's the roundhouse. And he was so annoyed. If you were to blow that up, he had to write the number of the locomotive on the locomotive. He had to put type on the trains.
Get out of town.
And they insisted on it. And it
How big is this thing?
Up a tree. It's pretty big. It's like 30 by 40 inches. But he actually had to, get the right train cars in there, and he was not happy about it. But he needed to take care of his family, and he did it, and he did the best he could with it. And they bought it. Get this. Years later, he's in Mexico City.
Yeah.
And the painting is in a junk shop in Mexico City 20 years later. And he ends up buying the painting back and having it sent back to his studio.
That's that must have hurt. Oh man.
Yeah, but I think there's what you're seeing, if you blow that up like you just did.
Yeah.
Look at the tree forms and how he's studying the difference in everything. Look at the character in the forms. And if you look at his watercolor closely and drawing, what you see is him really paying attention to in the groupings of those right there. You got it, buddy. Blow up that section. That right where you're looking. Look at the character. Look at how different each tree form is. And yet he's holding it all together because he's grouping his values, right? It's that beautiful combination of unity and variety. That's how he elevates these places that could be so boring in a painting. And when people paint and they make their forms generic, they miss out on this. Right? Like there's people that paint pine trees, for example, and even though it's a good pine tree, they paint every pine tree the same way.
Right.
Right. And it's like, oh, it's an archetype for a pine tree. And what I love about Inness, he's saying, no, I'm going to get this place, this time, this day, these trees. He's digging deep to find out those things. So the painting might be, according to the railroad, about that train, but there's a whole lot more love in those tree shapes, I can tell you, in that painting.
So this was done from life, I'm assuming.
The sketch was, absolutely. It's like 18
is it
by
black
24
and white,
inches.
actually?
Yes. Yeah. Can you blow it up a little? Yeah. It's yes. It was black and white. It was like
trying to find a signature, a date, but there's nothing there.
Yeah, the date is it was 1855. It's 18 by 24 inches.
You know what's interesting? Who am I to critique anybody? But the perspective, and it might be because it was done from life and the painting was done in the studio, but the perspective on the train and the buildings works way better in the sketch than it does in the painting.
Yeah, it does.
It falls apart a little bit in the painting, the perspective.
Well, it gets piecey. It becomes pieces.
Yeah.
Right. I think when he's working from life, he's aware of how he connects his darks in a painting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because it's always the structure, the value structure and the collected value structure of the darks that carry the light in the painting. And in his study, you see a real conscious effort at that. But, who knows? Maybe he had somebody from the railroad come in and say, that building in the back needs more detail. You need to do. And so what happens is he ends up working on those things to such exclusion of everything else that they become separate pockets of observation in the painting.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what it is. They're not considered in the totality of the picture. After a certain point, there's so much of an expectation upon him to realize these forms that they start to take over in an
Yeah. I imagine the
uncomfortable way.
client's like, I really want you to draw
Yeah.
attention to this building and this train
Yeah.
car and so on.
Yep.
Whereas he might have let it fall back a little more.
Yeah. So it was just like, I think you could see where he's enjoying himself, getting all
Well,
the different greens and all that kind of stuff. And he does a beautiful job with the recession on the color of the buildings as they're going away from us
oh yeah.
into the into the mist, or the sfumato, as the Italians call it, smoke. Right, that atmosphere. There's some beautiful atmosphere in the painting.
Look at
You know,
that stagecoach. It's
yeah,
just a few strokes and it totally works.
yeah, yeah,
That is
yeah.
too cool.
All that stuff gives you a little sense of scale, but
Yeah.
it's all about the railroad taming the land, all the tree stumps cut back, and it's all about the power of the railroad.
Would you say that commission or not, he would see himself more as a documentary painter than a decorative painter?
At this stage, is certainly so in his life. I don't think he was ever fully a decorative painter, ever.
Well, let me clarify what I mean by that. So when I first had you on, I had a lot of landscape painters on in the beginning, because if you remember, I was really searching, and I
Yeah,
still am trying to figure out this landscape thing and where, what my contribution to it would be. And I would often ask people, I don't remember if I asked you, but I know I asked the question quite a few times. Where do you lean? Are you trying to capture the scene as it is, or are you more interested in creating the perfect composition and it doesn't matter what the place is? And I got different answers from different artists. I
yeah,
tend to feel like if I'm going to paint a landscape, I want to, for lack of a better word coming to mind right now, I want to glorify that place. So
hmm,
I've sort of lean toward the documentary approach where, yeah, I'm going to make some edits maybe, but as few as possible so that I can have a beautiful representation of the place. It's not like I'm avoiding beauty. I want beauty, but I want the place. Where
yeah.
other
I know.
artists just want it to look good over the couch. Like that's the most important thing. How does it
No,
look over the couch,
yeah, I understand, and I kind of lean more towards where you're at. I try to like, to me, when I paint outdoors, I'm painting a portrait,
Yeah, that's where I want to be. Yeah.
and I could sit down and get a decent likeness. I haven't painted a portrait in 2 years, but I can still get a good likeness. That's because
Because you're drawing when you're outside.
it's the care that I take when I'm
Yeah.
outdoors. And because the specificity of that place is important to me. And I think a lot of people are making a painting, right? And then forms can get generic. And those forms become kind of generic features that get moved around in a pleasant way in the picture,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be, can make can make an attractive picture and all that kind of stuff. But to me, I have to get at the thing. I think that's what Levitan was doing, and certainly that's what George Inness was doing with his sketches, with his studies. He was really studying deeply that place. Now, how he distilled that vision in the studio is another story, and we can talk more about that. But I thought that this would be a nice second image to go through,
Mm-hmm.
because number one, it's a commission. We all have to deal with compromise. We talked about compromise, but it was not something that he was particularly happy about. But there's many beautiful things about this painting, and for 1855, it's got a lot of good color in it. He loved
Mm-hmm.
Corot, as I love Corot, but he thought Corot was kind of colorless. He thought he was a great tonalist. He thought about him more in terms of tone.
Mm-hmm.
But he certainly had a really good idea of color as value in his paintings. He understood value structure beautifully, and I think that came probably from doing a lot of those value studies. Essentially that painting, that watercolor study, is very much like what I do with my underpaintings, and how I
Oh,
was
is it?
taught to freeze in effect. Yeah, he's got all the shadow shapes in there, right?
Yeah.
And leaving the light shapes largely open.
When you say underpainting, you just mean your first stage in a plein air painting.
Yeah, when I do all my shadow shapes first
Right.
to freeze an effect, there's a couple of really inherent problems with the painting which he tried to fix, and he saw it right away in his sketch. When you look at the sketch, the X marks the spot in it. You see the big X.
No, I don't see a big X.
You don't see where those forms crisscross to the middle, right?
I thought you meant literally a big X. I'm like, what?
Well,
He put an X in it? No, I do. I see it now.
Yeah, and that's never a good thing. And he in the final painting, you can see he tried to blow a hole in it in the center there to avoid that unfortunate design. By having that plume of smoke.
Yeah, that does break it up a little bit.
Cut through the center, it kind of helps alleviate some of that.
Well, and he moved the train back a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's see. The next one is Peace and Plenty. It's a really big painting. It was done at the end of the Civil War.
That's not it, is it?
No, that's June. Nope. That's the last one we're going to do. Nope.
Don't worry, we'll get through this.
Nope. Getting closer. That's it.
Oh, that's it right there?
Yeah, they are in order. You just have to you just have to move your cursor to the left. So that's
I didn't realize I had them in order. Okay.
Yeah. So
it's not a great image, unfortunately, but it's video.
It's the best, and it's the best I could get for you.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is all last minute. We talked on Saturday, and I only had yesterday.
No criticism. Just apologizing to the viewers.
No, but that painting was kind of a seminal painting for him for a lot of reasons. It's an epic painting. It's really, really large. I don't know the exact size on it, but it's, I don't know, like 5 by 7 feet or something to that effect. It's big. But it was done to mark the end of the Civil War. After four.
What's on the beach?
It's a cut hayfield.
Oh,
those are shocks of hay. But you can see the work is starting to change a little bit. He's starting to dissolve forms into each other a little more.
Yeah.
It's a little less rigid. He's letting the light spill from one form to the next, and he's transitioning his color and value patterns better and more naturally into each other. Is
he becoming more tonal, or is that just the reproduction?
No, that painting was tonal, but you have to understand it was also backlit.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, and so that time of day when everything's backlit, I think you got so much silhouette, you're not seeing as much into the color often. Right. But if you look at the way he treats that sky and that beautiful transition and that blast of light in there, and compositionally, it's a beautiful piece as well. But at the beginning of the Civil War, he was all for it, and he was trying to raise subscription money for people and get people trained. And by the end of the war, he was, of course, like everyone else, just fatigued by the loss on both sides and the horror of it all. And so this marked the end of the Civil War for him. So it was a kind of an allegorical painting about kind of regrowth and all that kind of stuff. But as a light effect, the paintings starting to feel a little bit more natural in terms of flow of light. Mm-hmm. And the spilling of light from one form to the next, right? Because a lot of times people draw a form and then they paint a form and then they put the light on the form. But he's beginning to think about how the light flows across the form and how everything becomes subordinated to that flow of light, as opposed to just thinking of objects with light on them. It's creating that flow of light. So
that's remarkably convincing for a painting that represents such a fleeting moment.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about Inness's work, that he's works very hard to capture that, and that's what he loved in Corot. And it's what I love in Corot. What Corot was doing was establishing a singular harmony in his paintings, particularly his early work. His later work became more mannered, as we all know. It's still very beautiful, but it's mannered. And the early stuff, the early studies he did in Italy, they're all about honoring that specific harmony, right? And you've got a handful of considerations that are your variables, right? You've got the angle of the sun, you've got the color of the light, you got the color of the objects themselves, and you have the prevailing moisture content in the air and how that affects all the color shifts. And he's starting to become much more sensitive to those things as we get into the mid 1850s. So if we go to the next one, which is the monk. Oh, that's it. Thank you. So he made 2 trips to Italy, again at the from the largesse of Ogden Haggerty, and so brought his family, and he lived there for almost 2 years both times, and then he had access to seeing all these other paintings. And I wouldn't be surprised if he saw the Macchiaioli painters. I mean, he was there at the time they were painting in Florence. And he actually painted in Florence as well. But at this point, the paintings become, you see a beautiful design orientation in this. He loved these Barberini pines and the kind of the odd, beautiful sculpted shape of them. And his effects in these Italian paintings become, again, more fleeting. You got to get this momentary thing. And he does this beautiful job. And again, simply abstractly, if you were to take that and just do a linear drawing of the main masses of that picture within that rectangle, the design is beautiful.
It really
just
is.
In terms of how he broke up the space.
Yeah.
And how he's spotting his lights, right? So you see obviously the sky is right, the star of the show, but the monk is, it takes a subordinate role there, but is necessary to triangulate the lights to establish a sense of scale. All right, and he liked, quite frankly, the civilized landscape. He rejected the Hudson River School idea of the raw, untouched landscape.
Oh, really?
He preferred a landscape that had been groomed over time by man. He liked the integration of those two things. And so you'll see that in all of his paintings. But the greens in this painting, if you blow it up and look at it, they're really, really beautiful. And look at the drawing on the trees on the right-hand side. Look at how beautiful the drawing is. I mean, there's a real elegance and a lack of repetition, right? Which puts the eye to sleep, obviously. So he's creating beauty and interest everywhere, so that everything is important, but not everything is of equal importance. And he's allowing his underpainting to strike through. He loved transparent color. And he said to his son, Georgie, son was named George as well. Georgie, he said, there's nothing as beautiful as transparent color. And so often he would glaze with black. He would put a black glaze over. So in this case, I think he has a brownish underpainting. From what I've seen on a lot of the originals, it looked like he did in some cases, a very thoughtful drawing with either charcoal and even inked over. And then so there's an India ink in some of them. Where you can see it strike through the paint, not all the time, but you see it in some of them. So he was really careful about the shapes in this. And we're at, let's see, this is 1873. Okay. So this is
what was his lifespan? When was he born and when did he die? Do you know?
Yeah, he died, let's see, in 1894. And what year was he born? I should have that, but I don't. But he was 69 when he died, if you want to do the math. So he lived quite a long life. But this was done after his second return trip from Italy. And so he's synthesizing what he's learned from the Barbizon painters what he's picked up in Italy. And the paintings are becoming the tonal transitions are more beautiful. They're less abrupt, right? So your eye is naturally transitioning from one color to the next. And he had a really profound understanding that in order to attain a harmony, every color had to have something of the color next to it within it. And so if you to scan through this painting, it's exactly what you're going to see. But the other thing is, like I said, I love the character of the shapes.
Oh yeah, I keep going back down to this clump of trees
That's
right here.
what I was just talking about. Blow that up. Look at that. Look at how
really.
Yeah,
it's hard to do.
Well, you think about it. You know how you know Chardin's work, right?
Yeah.
Well, Chardin. Sometimes I think he loved still life more than he liked painting people. You know, he has a picture called The Kitchen Maid, and he's painted that poor kitchen maid with the same sensitivity that he painted the gourds underneath her by her feet. You know, and I think Inness loved all of these natural forms. I mean, look at the volumetric nature of the olive trees to the left-hand side there.
Yeah.
Look at how form-oriented that is. And look how he's grouped and connected. He's got an average light that runs through it and an average dark that runs through the base of those trees that's connecting everything. At this point, he's really beginning to group his lights and darks in cleaner families of color, but at the same time, he's not over modeling as much. You're seeing in this painting a profound change in 20 years, where he's starting to really pay attention, you know, to saying what the picture doesn't need in it. And just look at the back row of trees. Look at how beautiful that shape is on that back row.
The design of the branches is just gorgeous.
Yeah, but even the row below it is so
right shape, here.
The top of that, look at it.
I know.
So everything in nature can be broken down to a convex, concave, or an angle. And when you combine convex, concave, and angle right next to each other, you activate the eye, and you see that happening all through there.
That's
convex,
a good tip
concave,
right there.
and
convex,
angle.
Concave, and an angle.
Yeah, and anytime you have a convex next to a concave, it activates the eye. And if you juxtapose that with angles periodically, you can break any complex geometric form down to those three things.
Oh, and he's doing that all day.
He's doing it everywhere, man. That painting is absolute genius as far as I'm concerned. That's organizationally, it's just profoundly beautiful. But again, now this idea of he's been studying nature intimately. Now you see a person that's starting to distill more. That's starting to say, no, I don't need all of this in there to say this thing.
Does this qualify as one of those quote unquote abstract paintings?
It's heading in that direction. Like I said,
it obviously is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's looking at the power of the design, and that's intentional. That is not random, you know? So
how much paint is he using? I mean, this picture is not great, but it looks fairly thin.
Well, it's super thin. Like I said, he loved transparent color. And then he would use often really heavy impasto. There's a painting in Washington, D.C. I think it's at the National Gallery.
We lost you for a sec. At the National Gallery in London?
Yeah, no, in Washington, D.C.
In Washington, okay.
Yeah, and it's like a beech tree in the woods with a giant rock next to it. The paint was so thick on that painting, and he was so impulsive. Like I said, he didn't wait for something to dry before he painted over it. That if you go into the museum and you look at it, the paint is oozing over the rabbit on the lower part of the frame.
Really?
It was still sliding. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a trip.
Yeah. And it's really thickly painted. But he loved the transparency for the sake of atmosphere in a painting. And so he did a fair amount of glazing. And sometimes he would paint somewhat directly and thinly, and then he would glaze, and then he would overpaint opaquely. So it was just kind of a thing. And his highlights were really opaque touches on the top of something that was semi-transparent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised his paintings lasted very long, if that's what he's doing.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing actually.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is, you know, the order in which I picked them is important,
Yeah.
because you're starting to see that change in his work. I think the next one is called Autumn Oaks. That's it. That's one of his mid-career. That's 1878 now. Okay. So mid late career. Now he's matured. And what you're seeing is a really exquisite distillation of form. I think I was sharing with you, I had a really unique kind of experience teaching a workshop many years ago in Manhattan, in New York. And we spent a day at the Met and a day at the Brooklyn Museum. And that's my favorite thing in the world to do, is to take a group through a museum, through a collection, and talk about history and craft and anecdote. And, and I was literally talking about form and the fact that many people are taught to copy form, but don't truly understand it. If you understand form, you can distill it. And the distillation of form in these trees is so exquisite. He doesn't have every little tiny dark in that tree. If you were to photograph a tree like that, you'd see all these little spots because the camera sees everything. And he's not doing that. What he's doing is look at the difference.
I know.
That's so great.
Because he was painting every
those.
leaf here. And now, it's much more contemporary looking.
Yeah. And he's working with kind of an average light and an average dark on every form. He's grouping his darks really, really beautifully. Whatever's in the light is in the light, whatever's in the shadow is in the shadow, and he makes no bones about it. I mean, look at how he constructed the sky. I mean, that is so hard to do. And how dark he went in the sky, which was really tricky, which speaks to something kind of fun about him. He was friends with a man named William Page. They both taught at a school in Eagleswood, New Jersey. It was a utopian community. And he was given a house and a studio, and Page was a portrait painter, and he was teaching landscape there at this private school. And they would fraternize all the time, hang out and have a drink and talk about art. And the big argument, the big bone of contention was halftone. And I joke about this with my students. I go, that's when artists were artists, when people argued about halftone. So basically, Page was very pragmatic, and he took a piece of tin and white and black, and he gradated them together. And he said, in here, you can see where one ends and the other, this is halftone. And Inness vehemently disagreed, and they got into violent arguments about halftone. And Inness thought it was darker than that. And you can see that in Inness's paintings. He's keying down. And I think part of it is because he's glazing with black. And what the black glaze is doing is he's using a black glaze, but the shadows still have atmosphere. You might not see it in this image because things fill in the printing process. And then this is a reproduction of a reproduction of a reproduction. That's not the real thing. The actual painting is absolutely filled with air. And I was taking a group through the American wing at the Met, just having a grand time. And I was talking about form. And I'm like, there's such a difference between understanding it and copying it. And I turn the corner, and there is this painting. And then there was a painting right next to it, which I couldn't find. It was like a waterfall or something by somebody like Thomas Moran. And all of the rocks around the waterfall were perfectly drawn, the outside shape of the rocks. But the painting felt flat as a pancake. He was drawing the contours, but he didn't have a full understanding of internal volume. Right. And I remember Osborne saying something to me which blew my mind when I was a student. He said, Joe, you have to paint a tree so it goes around like this and like that. So how do you create that form so it's going this way and like this? And so this is so beautifully distilled. And the other thing that he does is he's always keen on proximity of opposites in his painting.
What do you mean by that?
He does. I'll tell you. He always plays with scale. So you see that short, bushy apple tree in the front,
Yeah.
and how that makes the other trees look that much bigger and more volumetric.
You talk about right here.
Yeah, yeah. So he plays a lot with scale with his images. He'll have a tall elm tree next to a short bushy tree, so the elm will feel that much more stately, and that so it actually enhances the thisness of each thing.
Mm.
He's really big on variety of scale and variety of shape.
So he must be editing at this point then.
Of course he's editing. This is a studio construct, this painting.
Oh, it is. Completely.
Well, I'm sure he had studies that he worked from, right? But I mean, even the local colors on the, on the oaks and how beautifully different they are. He's done such a beautiful job with the unity variety thing going on in here, right? Because nature, that's what nature provides us. Extraordinary variety with extraordinary unity. And a lot of people will simplify something to the point that they take the variety out of it, right? And I think the most challenging thing, and it's something I'm terribly interested in, is maintaining maximum variety while holding unity in a picture. How do you?
Why does nature provide that? I've often thought about that. Is nature, in a way, you've described nature as sort of aesthetic ideal because it already has all these elements there.
Well, that's why I believe, I won't get deep into the weeds on this, why I believe in intelligent design.
Oh, okay. That's what I was going to ask you about. Well, you kind of answered already, but is the planet perfect in its design because we are here and it's all we know, so we're programmed to appreciate it?
No, we delight in beauty, Jeff.
Yeah.
We delight in beauty. And we delight in variety, for that matter, too.
Yeah.
Right? It's if you can have both of those things, right? Like I said, it's proximity of opposites, unity and variety. Think about Michelangelo. When I had a chance to finally go to Italy, my friend Andy Lattimore used to say to me all the time, "Oh, if you go to Italy, it's going to change you." And I thought he was precious. And he was absolutely right. Because when I looked at Michelangelo, I was like, oh my good God. When you go and then I spent a whole afternoon just drawing the unfinished slaves, because I had taught gesture figure drawing here for 14 years. I love the figure. And what I realized when I'm drawing these things is all of those 8-foot tall blocks of stone, every subordinating form is subject to a single serpentine rhythm that runs around that figure from top to bottom. There's a single rhythm that everything is subordinated to. And he combines the perfect amalgam of masculine and feminine in these sculptures. They've got this elegant, sensuous curvilinearity in this mashup with angularity and bulk. Right? So what do you think he's doing? It's that proximity of opposites that's creating that beauty and that excitement. And I think it exists in nature. It doesn't exist everywhere. I will tell you that if you drive down the river here, in some of the bluffs are exactly the same size and shape and same color. And, so I've
driven through Nevada a few times when I'm just like, ooh, God forgot about this place.
Yeah, he was tired by the time he got to the
That
Midwest.
was day 7. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I missed Nevada. Whatever.
Yeah. So so it does exist, but I just think that there are certain areas where you really you kind of see this delight in that variety. And in this painting, the light effect is spectacular. Of course, that spotlight effect, right? Where that foreground is in shadow and it's pulling you into that. I mean, that's an effect he painted a lot. It's a very beautiful effect. But one of the things I respect greatly about Inness is he didn't hang his hat on that, and that's not all he did. Right? He painted all kinds of effects. One of which we're going to be looking at. Let's see. Oh, it's not the next one. It's the one after. But so I think that what he's doing in this painting, if you look at the way he holds unity and variety in the sky, keeps the light, and the shadow. So even though that the shadow mass is varied or variegated, he's got the shadow values transitioning so beautifully into each other that that whole dark mass reads as a unit. It doesn't read as separate pieces. That's
Mm,
really hard. That's really hard to do, you know,
mm.
but so beautifully done, you know.
This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary brushes. But for the rest of you, come on. Take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting.
Yeah, you know, I'm so hung up on that previous conversation we just had. You know, it is kind of interesting. You take the East Coast, I imagine it's sort of like this in Minnesota. I don't think I've been to Minnesota. But, you know, all along the East Coast, we have these incredible deciduous forests. And
Right.
in the fall, they've got, it seems like every color under the sun, but yet the greens and the oranges and the yellows are always harmonious. You'll never see a tree with like a teal green that just completely clashes with the other greens.
You're hitting on something really important. No matter how chromatic the color exists in nature, it's never out of harmony.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what you're
quite remarkable. Yeah. And
yeah,
it
and
easily could be. It easily could have been. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't have teal trees and cobalt trees and that completely clash with the burnt orange leaves, you know?
yeah, but like I said, it just never exists in nature,
No, it doesn't.
that's how you can tell where when a painting becomes false to me. Like there are paintings of the West where you have the the yellow aspens against the blue sky,
Oh,
and
God.
people are just painting ultramarine and white in the sky and cad yellow in the tree, and it feels like an old Arizona Highways magazine cover from 1970,
That's
where they pushed all the color in the printing, you
right.
know, and it doesn't feel natural because those colors actually are rarely pure.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean pure color never exists, but a blue sky always has a skein of something floating over the top of it,
Yeah.
right? And that mitigates that, whether it's a gray, whether it's a violet, whether it's red and white or orange and white. There's also this beautiful, delicate stuff that floats over the top of it. And it's the same thing with the yellows. Those yellows, they're when you push that, you think adding more chroma is somehow helping the painting. And mistakenly, I thought the same thing when I was first studying with Osborne. And now I realize that it's all the rich saturated neutrals that serve the chroma in the painting.
Hmm.
And look at how he's reserving his lights in this picture,
Yeah, he
you
really
know,
is.
and where the richest green is. He doesn't have that repeating all over the
Here
place.
in the little valley here.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah.
He's kind of implementing a little bit of tenebrism in here. It's almost an unnatural light. It's as though the heavens have a spotlight right here in this little valley.
Well, you bring up, that's, where you have to discuss his connection to Swedenborgism,
What is
right?
that?
Emanuel Swedenborg was from Stockholm, and he created it was a kind of a religious sect that was a little less dogmatic than most religions at the time, and a lot of people, there was a big rage towards it, and William Page was the one who turned Inness onto it, because Inness was constantly studying religion and trying to find something that he felt fit what his idea of God is.
Mm-hmm.
And so he believed that all color in nature had spiritual significance. And so what you just said is you probably hit the nail right on the head. I mean, I think there's definitely a very profound spiritual aspect to his work, because it was something that he felt very strongly about. And there's something different about his work that I don't think can be copied. There's this beautiful, strange mix of objective, truthful observation and subjective choices, where he's being driven in a direction, and he's following that direction, and he's marshaling everything that he has at his ability to try to serve the oneness of that thing. He said that purpose of a painting is not to instruct, not to edify, but to awaken an emotion. Right?
Inness said this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah, and he said this, and you have to think about so much of, I mean, what was
Did Joe Paquet forget something?
Yes,
I'm glad I was here to witness it.
I'm having a brain fade. Whistler.
Okay.
Right? Whistler, and the whole Whistler-Ruskin trial was about him challenging the notion of British narrative painting. That all painting at the time had to be moralizing and storytelling. He said, "The hell with that. I'm not interested." You know, I have painted a painting with a tavern, with a small dark figure in front of that tavern. I care nothing for the past, present, or future of that little figure, only that black was wanted at that spot in the painting, right? And so that was revolutionary at the time.
So he's creating emotion simply with shape, design,
and
color,
yes.
value. It's in that sense, it's very abstract.
Well said. Yes, I think I think that's why they're becoming more distilled, because he's getting better at that idea of that singular emotion, that singular idea that he's after. There's less flailing. There's such a greater command of his materials, right? And his knowledge. Those trees are painted with understanding. They're not copied.
Well, that brings up a point that I've made in the past, and that is that, well, at least this is what I believe about my work. My goal is to stay out of my own way by being good enough that people are not distracted by my weaknesses so that they can see the power of those things we listed. Does that make sense? So it
makes perfect sense, actually.
Because if he had, like, let's take this painting, for example, where we've got these cows receding into space. I've been really staring at this, analyzing it as you're talking, and thinking, you know, he did a remarkably good job, if this is a studio painting that he created, at making that very convincing perspective. Because if he put this little man back here,
yes,
a quarter of an inch higher or a quarter of an inch lower, the perspective would be completely thrown off.
Yeah.
Right? So because he hits it, you're not completely distracted by a failure in a basic academic principle, so that you can't appreciate the beauty of the design and the color. And
I think that's really well articulated. I couldn't say it better. That's terrific. So let's take a look at the next one. Is called Catskill Mountains.
Oh, freak, dude! This one, I didn't look at this. This is nice.
Oh man!
Okay,
well,
now I'm getting converted.
All right.
Holy piss!
Yeah, 1870s as well.
Oh man, that's a beauty.
This is giant. This is at the Chicago Art Institute.
I gotta get to Chicago.
And it's glorious.
It looks pretty thin. This looks, is that brown underpainting or is it brown brushwork?
Well, the shadow in the trees is more of a violet than a brown.
No, I'm talking about in the grass in the foreground.
Yes, yeah. He did that very often with his greens. In some of his paintings, you'll see a kind of a brown scrub underneath, and then he'll lay the color over the top of it. But in this instance, this is just monumental. It's like 8 feet long. It's huge.
The sky is incredible.
That's what I mean. Look at the transition, the color transition and value transition, and how as those clouds on the middle right, that line of clouds moves into the sun, how it just disappears.
Yeah.
The line below it, that big.
Right in here. Yeah. It just sort of fades out.
Yeah. The way he fades that out, and
it makes the light feel like it's melting the clouds.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what he does with edge transitions in this painting is magnificent. Again, now we're really getting into everything in that picture being subordinated to that bath of light, right? Everything is, my teacher Osborne was great with me, and he said, Joe, even on a gray day in the winter, I should be able to look at one of your paintings and know where the sun is behind the clouds. With Inness, you get to this point in his paintings. Anywhere you look, you know exactly where the light source is.
Wait a minute, how true is that statement? Do you follow that in your own paintings? If you're doing a cloudy day painting, do you really think about direction of light?
Of course.
Really?
Yeah, because the light source is still the light source. It's just covered up. If you take a light and you put a white cloth over the top of it and create a softbox like a photographer uses.
I'm going to remember that. I don't think I've done a painting too many paintings on full overcast, so I'm going to remember that.
Yeah. So, but this is just the color harmony, right? The sense of space, the flow of light in this, the beauty of those shapes. I mean, if you zoom in by that barn and you look at those bigger tree shapes, right?
This is a barn?
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah, or a barn or a house. But it's just, especially in that middle zone of the painting, that middle zone by the water down to the right, that if you just blow up that, look at that grouping of trees.
It's so great.
Look at how different the character is.
I know. And it's so, well, I guess it's an 8-foot painting, but even on an 8-foot painting, what is that? Maybe 6-inch tree? It's still not. He's putting attention on little stuff.
Well, if you blow that up, look at the difference. And this is what I teach with underpainting. If you look at the lighter yellowy green trees just to the right there,
right here,
look at how soft the transition is. The light is filtering down into the mass, right? There's not an abrupt edge at all.
You're talking about these trees here?
Yes.
Both of them?
That one you're on right now.
Okay.
My point being, the transitional edge along the shadow on every form in that grouping is different. He's paying attention to that nuance. That's what I was trained in, right. and that's what I do with my underpaintings. I'm constantly that's how you elevate the commonplace. So right there,
when you
the whole painting is worth that.
Yeah, it is. That's a painting right there. When you start your lay-in and you're just doing this sort of watercolor thing in your lay-in, are you actually dealing with transitions into the lights before you even add light?
Oh, yeah. If you look at any of my underpaintings, you'll see the transitional edges are all considered right at the beginning. I'm learning
before you've added the green. You're starting to feather out your transition.
I'm paying attention to all of that.
No
right at the
joke.
Start of a painting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
You know what's remarkable about this scene? I've got sort of a pet peeve, and it's really flowery landscapes because everyone just loves the backlit stuff, the purpley orange skies and whatever. And
you mean, is it like women in white dresses on the beach picking up shells for you?
It is. Yeah, or paintings of kittens, or dolphins in Florida or something. It's just that those really over the top landscapes I don't know, they just don't appeal to me. But they're eye candy, and I know that they sell in many environments, but he's riding that line without crossing it somehow.
Well, it's because that section I just showed, we just talked about, there's so much truthful understanding and sensitivity in there in a place where most people just don't pay attention.
It's still very naturalistic.
That's exactly right. He's got all that variety while he's maintaining unity.
Yeah.
He's got slightly different local color on those tree masses in there as well. I mean, that's an extraordinary piece of painting. He's never painted better, in my estimation. That center section there is fine a piece of painting in terms of articulating masses of foliage and trees and getting the unity and variety component as I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's something else.
And like I said, that stuff most people just blow off. right? They paint an idea of something, or an archetype, right? And it was what's his name? Another name slipping my Odd Nerdrum.
Yeah.
He talks about that. He said, I don't want to paint a portrait. I want to paint an archetype of something.
Hmm.
And that's fine if that's what you want to do. But I think what he's doing here is he's saying this is so beautiful all by itself. It's kind of like we've talked about this, painting a rose. What the hell are you going to bring to a rose?
It's the truth.
You
It's
know,
already so perfect.
other than abject sensitivity and admiration. And I think Abbott Thayer, if you look at his roses, or even J. Alden Weir, they're really beautiful.
Hmm.
Fontaine Latour, of course, but Abbott Thayer, boy, look at those roses. And it's just, so I think what he's doing here is he's making that other type of painting that you're talking about look cheap.
Hmm.
Because I was studying before I started, really got into Inness, before I really got into Levitan. I was studying the American Impressionist painters, and I've always loved Child Hassam. But he got into this broken color thing with his paintings, this very impressionistic broken color thing. And after a while, it started to look candy-ish to me.
Hmm.
I prefer that section that we just blew up. I could look at that all day. The other type of painting is an idea of something. You're wrapping an idea around nature that's decorative and interesting, but not necessarily truthful.
Hmm.
This has a profound ring of truth to it for me, just for me. I wouldn't put that on
I'm
anybody
with
else.
you 100%.
And I think that's where, for me, that is as fine a piece of painting as I've ever seen by George Inness. And just the scope of the light effect, the disposition or the breakup of greens, and how he's doing the same thing. He's spotting his darks. You see where the two figures are, right? And how he's moving your eye from that group of trees by the house to the figures, to the clump in the middle, back to the edge of the water, back to the tree line. Bump, 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 bump. He's got
Yeah.
touch points.
It's okay. Here's what's brilliant to me. I don't know that I would have thought of this. In fact, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't, because I'm not the landscape painter he was. But so he's got this incredibly brilliant, relatively speaking, brilliant yellowy leaves back here.
Mm-hmm.
They're really the warmest leaves in the painting, as far as I can tell, but they're kind of toward the back.
But they're not the most saturated color. That's why it works.
Well, it also works because there's more than one way, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it also works because there's more than one way to create depth. Another way is contrast. And when he puts these dark figures in here, it takes this dullish, relatively dull green in the foreground and creates this incredible contrast, which brings it forward, in my opinion.
You're exactly right. But the other thing is, look at the rich blue-green field on the right-hand side.
Yeah, that's pretty chromatic.
So that has more saturation and intensity, even though
but it's still blue.
Color.
It's still blue-green and not yellow.
It doesn't matter. It's the saturation component.
So saturation trumps temperature and depth, you think?
Yes, that's a chromatic color. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's a different family of green.
Yeah.
So you're not wrong about the value thing, but at the same time, when you surround anything that's got any degree of yellow with anything that's got violet in it, the violet will activate the yellow in the color. So you can use a color that's far less chromatic and have it still look really green.
So this looks so yellow because it's under a band of violet.
Yes, that's right.
Wow, that's a great lesson. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So if I were to take a clip of this and put it next to this, it wouldn't look nearly as yellow.
Well,
or bring it up front. Bring it up front, let's say, up here.
Yep.
That's wild. Yeah, that's
it's all relativity. And he understood that at this point in his career so beautifully. So let's see. Next one is Gray Lowry Day. No, that's June. That's it.
Oh, that's it.
It's that one. Yeah.
Oh, this is the one you talked about yesterday, isn't it?
Yeah, and I couldn't get a good reproduction of it.
That's not terrible.
I've seen this painting in the flesh twice. It's one of the most magnificent paintings of greens I've ever seen. Sadly, that I looked all over online. I couldn't get a good reproduction of it. You see how separated the tones are?
Mm-hmm.
It's much more homogeneous. But this was done at a single go. In one day. In one day, he painted this painting.
That's crazy. I don't even understand how that's possible.
Well, he was on fire.
But I mean, it just doesn't look like wet into wet. I mean, I believe you, but it just doesn't look like wet into wet.
Yeah, his son talks about him painting that in a single session.
Wow.
But
crazy.
you know, but he could also ruin a painting in a single session too. He was famous for both, you know, absolutely destroying something that was really good, thinking he's going to make it a little better, and then he couldn't stop himself, and then the thing starts to morph. So sadly, this is broken up a little too much. I apologize. Like, you see the dark that's in the center above that real yellowy green. None of that is that contrasty in the painting. But what's really beautiful about the painting is the cadence of the shapes, the way he moves the eye, where he's moving it quickly and where he slows it down, right? With all of that variety. And it's one of the things I think about all the time. It's one of the things I teach is to draw first. And that a really good drawing can have rhythm, cadence, and hierarchy to it, just like a piece of music. So he's creating visual music with how he activates the eye, where he slows it down, where he speeds it up. I mean, it's and that shape of that silhouette of that tree and how beautiful and unique that is, you know, just absolutely.
Yeah, that tree at the top is something else.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of care in there, and yet at the same time, there's risk, and we've talked about that yesterday. Touched on that a little bit. That combination of risk and care, right? And I think what's the allure for so many people of non-representational painting? I think it's abandon. It's letting go, right? Who doesn't like to let go?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the real challenge and the beauty is when someone has such a command of their skills, whether it be, you know, Sargent or Soren or somebody like that, and Inness in this case, where everything is freely painted, but his academic understanding underneath it is so profound that he doesn't ever take his foot off the gas and allow those forms to get generic, ever. That takes effort. And I think that it's an exhausting way to paint, because it's something that I think about all the time, right? How do I, no matter what section of the painting, where's the beauty? How do I find the beauty in that and the variety that's within that thing? And look at just look at the shape of the group of bushes on the lower right that are along the water's edge. Look at the variety in that shape. And
I still can't get over this as one sitting. I got to see the original.
Yeah, the original is so stunning. I remember when I was studying with John Osborne, it was like 1986 or 87, and there was 2 years in New York. They had the biggest retrospective ever of Sargent, the biggest retrospective of Inness and Sorolla. So I went to all of those multiple times. But I remember both of us standing in front of this with just our jaws hanging open. You know,
I'm afraid this probably doesn't do it justice. I mean, I can see
it
beautiful,
doesn't.
But
it doesn't at all. It doesn't at all. It's just that what you're seeing is the forms are beginning to be distilled even further now. You see how he's not outlining everything? He's letting edges transition into each other. He's got, especially on that right-hand side, look at all the lost edges. That's really gutsy. And that's understanding value against value and color against color, and allowing that your eye to roll that edge without having to force it with a line or a dark shape or a light shape. He's beginning to let go more. So the next one is...
Well, let me just comment one thing about this one is you're right. I do see a light direction, even though it's completely overcast.
Yeah.
Coming from the upper left.
Yep.
It's subtle, though. It's very subtle.
But it's on every form in the painting.
It is. Yep. I was literally looking for it, and it's
Yep.
definitely there.
Yep.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's awesome. So the next one is called June. That's it, June. Amazing painting.
Yeah,
I
that is
think
beautiful.
that's at the Brooklyn Museum. That's 1881. But this is just a kind of a seminal painting for him in terms of greens and how he's nuancing his greens. And look at now how spare the shapes are becoming. He's not over modeling now at all.
No, but he still takes time to put some really intricate details in here.
So let's talk about that. Who does the same thing? Think of Degas, right?
Yeah.
If you look at Degas' figure drawings when he was a student, right, they were all tonal,
Mm-hmm.
and he was modeling every form. By the end of his life, when he drew a dancer, it was all in line, and yet because of the way he understood anatomy and gesture, how one form passed over another with just line, he implied all that form, right? And I think that's what's going on here. He understands so much about form at this point that in those trees, he doesn't need a whole lot, but it doesn't mean there's not delicacy in the painting.
Yeah.
Again, look at the tree on the right. Okay, look at the exquisite delicacy of that tree.
That tree makes the painting.
Well, what that tree does is make the other trees look fuller and more bushy. This is what I was talking about. His ability to pay attention to that proximity of opposites in a picture and how that activates the eye.
But also it adds a nice linear component that otherwise might have been lacking a little bit.
Yeah, and I love that it goes right off the top of the canvas. I
Yeah.
mean, too often you see people cramming things into the rectangle.
Right.
Right. And I think the most interesting paintings have an implied life beyond the frame. So that idea of allowing things to go off the picture gives a greater sense of vastness outside of the frame of that picture, which I like.
Do you think he utilized photography at all?
I don't think he did, although it's entirely possible.
Well, the reason I ask is because when I've had Micah, our historian, on, we've had many conversations about how photography, whether an artist used it or not, likely influenced the way they crop paintings. Because a camera is going to crop trees out of the top or the side or whatever. Whereas throughout much of history, artists tended to try and keep everything in the frame. And Micah would argue that once photography came around, people started going, oh, it's kind of interesting to have the head of the horse kind of sticking off the side of the frame, which no one would have done before. And I'm just wondering if he might have been, whether he worked from photography or not, might have been influenced by imagery he'd seen.
I can't speak to that with any certainty at all. All I can tell you is he didn't like painting being anything like photography.
Yeah, well, that's obvious.
He said a photograph can replicate nature far better.
He said photograph can, right.
And that a painting should feel like a painting. There's one of his quotes, he talks about, he said there's a painting in a bar in New York of a barn door with hinges on it and a keyhole that's so realistic that you'd almost believe it was real, but the very fact that it's a painting tells you it's a lie. So basically, why bother?
I couldn't agree more with that.
Idea, and that's why this cult that people have of lining up their paintings with their subject outdoors when they photograph it.
Yeah.
You can't tell where one ends and one begins. I find that just for me, I find it silly.
Yeah.
You're making a painting,
Right. Oh, I feel the same way about hyperrealism. I'm just like, I'm bored.
Well, I'm bored by it. To me, I certainly respect the skill involved with rendering something, but to me, the beauty is in the edit and the distillation, not in the rendering of something. And that the more profoundly one understands form or color and all that, the less one needs in a picture to say something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great critique I got from Osborne one day. He didn't talk a lot, but when he spoke, he was really substantive. And it was a day, it was towards the end of the year I had taken off to study full time. I was 25 and I was in the studio alone with him, which was not common because it was at the Ridgewood Art Institute. So there was usually somebody else in there. And I suspect it was a Sunday or something, but I was finishing up this 24 by 30 inch painting. It was the best thing I had done under his guidance, certainly in that time. I was so excited about it. You know how that feeling that you have where you feel like you pushed yourself past something. And it was a painting of there was a dirt road going back through these pine trees. It was an old overgrown nursery and there was a yellow barn with an old metal roof on it. And there was a guy walking a horse down a road. Anyway, so there's dappled light and shadow going across the path. And I was so busy. I'm like, oh, I'm going to add some information into the shadow. So I'm putting like little stones in the mud and the dirt in the road, things like that. Anyway, he's just watching me sitting there with his coffee, not saying a word. And anyway, after about 20, 25 minutes, oh, I'm happy as a clam. You know, I'm so happy. I go over, I grab a cup of coffee and I flop down on the couch next to him and I look at him. I got this big smile on my face. And he's got this little wry smile and he says, well, that didn't help one damn bit. I said, what? I said, Joe, it didn't hurt it, but it didn't help it. And the hurting it and not helping it are equally useless. So when we're throwing crap into a picture, you really have to ask yourself. That's why when I paint when I've done my big paintings during COVID outside, I never try to finish them in the field. Because what I want to do is get an honest harmony and a truthful harmony. And then that last 10% of the picture could take 2 weeks in the studio, just looking at it, saying, what does it need and what doesn't it need? Right?
At that point, you're working from memory and studies, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll take a reference photo with me and just for shape or color or something. But generally, the essence of the picture is there.
Right.
But then it's a question of how do I distill, and this is what I love about this, how do I distill this image and elevate without exaggeration? How do I heighten the visual experience without exaggeration? And that comes through edit and selection. It comes from transitioning color, transitioning value, transitioning information in a painting, flow of light, right? Overall harmony. And so that's when I really will stare at it and I'll spend, I think I might've said this to you and I'm kind of embarrassed, but I'll tell you, I mean, I will be terrified to touch one of those paintings. I'll stare at it for 2 days before I have the guts to touch it because it was born of unselfconscious connection outdoors. And now I'm being,
you don't want to screw it up.
That's exactly right.
Oh, I know that feeling.
And now I'm looking at it going, shit,
I know.
You know, and now I'm going to get in my own way. If I'm not really careful, I'm going to end up getting in my own way. And so that's why I love Hopper, why I love Nighthawks, why, you know, there's a whole hour-long conversation just talking about that single painting for me and about the subjective choices that were made in that painting to heighten the visual experience.
Yeah.
And there's enough objective truth in it with enough subjective choices that you buy it as a plausible fiction. You buy it. And and to me, that level of discernment is something that is absolutely sorely lacking in the plein air painting world today. You know, just because you can paint something in 2 hours, that doesn't mean anything. Right? There's a whole world of understanding and study to be done in the studio in terms of these things that we're talking about right now. And I think those are the lessons, some of those lessons that can be learned through studying somebody like Inness.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that you said earlier when I said hyperrealism bores me, I think you said something like, yeah, rendering is impressive, but it's just rendering, right? I agree with you. And I think you would agree with me, that Inness, it's not as though Inness doesn't render. He knows how to render a form incredibly well. It's just, it's not his only one trick. He's not a one trick pony. He's got all of this depth within him to create a painting besides just that one thing. I mean,
well, he's also painting somewhat the way we see optically.
Right.
Right. I mean, there's a whole host of painters painting today that are very popular, that are doing these giant paintings with little tiny brushes, and they're rendering everything. And it looks very, there's a big cinematic high definition to it. But the way his focus is on that right-hand side of the picture. And as you move outside of that focal area, as you spiral outside of there, there's a diminishment of information.
Right.
There's a suppression of form and edges, and a kind of a de-escalation of color even. And so that is very subtle, and it's very beautifully done. And I think it's much more satisfying to look at because it's how we actually naturally see.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. That's probably my second favorite we looked at today.
Yeah, I think the next one.
Is it this one?
Let's see, close up of Stormy. Yeah, the Stormy Day. This is
now. This one looks somewhat amateur. Is this an early painting, or am I way off?
No, it's not. It's not. In particular, I was really fascinated by the sky in this picture. This is 1880s as well, and so
Really?
this is a little bit more violent. Yeah, if you blow it up, look at the way he's handling that sky. I mean, he was a huge fan of Constable, by the way. A huge, huge fan of Constable. And the way he's treating those volumes and the sky and those color transitions, I think are magnificent. I would agree in this particular instance with the painting, there's a bit of an incongruity between the sky and the landscape, which has been uncommon in the other pictures, right? It's the landscape has almost a little bit of a kind of a mystical, fairy-like kind of coloration to it. I can't quite put my finger on. And he's trying to pull the painting out with other vehicles that worked in other paintings. You see that house breaking the horizon and the smoke coming out of the chimney. He's trying to do something to bring some life to the front part of that picture. I mean, the front part of the picture is not holding together the way the other paintings have held together. But the reason I wanted you to see this is that work in that sky is magnificent.
What about it? This one I'm not following. So I'm curious why it is that's so magnificent.
Oh, the color transition and the value transitions in that sky with the variety of shapes. Most of us, it's human nature to repeat shapes, and the fact that he's got this big mass of clouds on the left, and you see as he's moving towards the light, what's happening to the clouds on the right hand side? What do you notice?
I mean, they're getting thinner.
They're warming up slightly as he's moving towards the light. So he's transitioning that cooler, darker tone. And that bit of work up in that upper right-hand corner is absolutely brilliant in terms of kind of truthful color transition with a sense of implied movement in it, which is, it just doesn't feel static. I agree that the rest of the painting isn't terribly successful, but I just thought that at this point, he's really starting to let go a little bit more. This has got a little more violence in it. And one of the things I love about his work is the proximity of care and violence, right? There's this delicacy, and then there's this boldness where he's just a complete wild man and he's after something. He's not playing it safe.
Definitely not playing it safe.
Well, that's what I love about it.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that.
That's what I find really beautiful about that sky. There's a unity and a variety. There's a variety of scale, a variety of shape, and there's this incredible transition of color that moves through those forms that I just find really beautiful. If I cover up the lower section if I cut off all the way up to that purple horizon, you could, if you shaved off that picture, just below the house. Look at
I
it.
agree. If I squint at it, it's definitely working. It feels very, what's the word? I don't know, kind of rushed.
Oh, but that's what I'm getting at. I don't mind that.
You don't mind that?
Not once in a while.
Is it possible that this was a plein air piece that was a study for a bigger one?
No, but it could very well be that he painted all that sky in one afternoon.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's in one single go. And as you know,
is there no signature on this? Is it a study? I mean, is it unfinished?
Don't know. Couldn't speak to that. Like I said, I just what I was interested in is how he's starting to distill his paintings.
Yeah.
They're risky. He's taking chances. Look, if you're going to jump, the chances of you landing, the further you jump, the less the chance you're going to land on your feet. I love the fact that the guy had the cojones to do this stuff. Like most people, they played safe their whole life. This is, at some point, right, if you don't shock the monkey, you're going to be doing the same shit for the rest of your life. And it's going to get predictable and safe. There's a lot of really fine painters out there today whose work hasn't changed in 20 years because they've got something that works and they're playing it safe. And I understand it's not a judgment. It's just, to me, what I love about that, like I said, if you were to crop that image, just crop it right up to the base of that white roof and then look at just the power of that. And like I said, the risk component, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to, you can render a painting really carefully and safely and build it from the ground up, and nobody's ever going to get mad at you, But I think, but at the same time, that day that I had the class with me and we walked around the corner at the Met and saw Autumn Oaks and that other painting that I mentioned earlier. And one was super safe and super controlled and frankly, a little bit boring. I said, who would you rather go to a party with, Inness or this guy?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, this guy's taking risks. He's taking chances. That's what I love about this. You don't have to love the painting, but there's something going on that there's a riskiness in that sky that I think is successful. The landscape's got, I think he struggled. There's too much going on and he was trying to use things from other things that worked in other paintings. And there's too much divided interest in it. But the sky, magnificent, absolutely magnificent. And that risk thing.
I've been to plein air events where I've seen painters whose work I know, and I look at what they're painting, and they're not necessarily really. I mean, they're painting what they're looking at, but not really. What I see is another version of something I've already seen.
Yeah, but that's what a lot of people do. It's very interesting. I've seen people go to Europe and paint stuff like they paint at home because that's what they look for.
Right.
And I think it's a really healthy thing to be able to honor that thing that's in front of you. And so when I was in New Zealand, I wasn't trying to paint something like I painted before.
Yeah.
When I was in England, I wasn't trying to paint something like I painted before. I was like, well, what is it about this place? This thing, this painting, unfortunately, has divided interest in it. And he tried everything under the sun to make that foreground interesting, but he's got too much going on.
Yeah.
He's got the stream, he's got the rocks, he's got the White House and the smoke but it's just, it's just not organized in a way like some of the other paintings to make them more successful. But I have a great respect for people that are willing to take a risk. And that means you push the mark further. You make a bolder mark, you make a bigger mark, you push the line a little further. Mm-hmm. Get the hell outside of your comfort zone once in a while. See what's there. That's what I like about this. So let's see.
Oh, you convinced me.
Yeah, the next one is October.
This one is called. If this is it is tiny.
Let's see.
Is that giraffes?
Hang on. What? That's not it.
I don't know what that is. Is it this one?
Nope. Let's see. Is it that one? Let's see. Early autumn. Let's see
We only
what else
got
you got there.
three or
Yeah.
four left.
Let's see what they are.
It's this one. And
Nope.
this guy, which is really unusable.
Nope.
And this one.
Yeah. So let's end with that. Okay. Because this was done right before he died, 1891, early autumn, Montclair. And now you can see, if you think of Juanita River, if you want to try to take that first one and combine and put it next to this, there, look at the difference.
Yeah, but you know what would be really interesting? I feel like you put these three together. I mean, geez, what? Dude, okay, so I got to tell you, I bought a painting years ago from an artist. I'm not even going to say the gender because heaven forbid, I don't want this person to know how I feel about this because I think it's a great person. But I bought this painting maybe 20 years ago. And then I lost touch with this person. And yesterday, out of nowhere, you know how Instagram is. You never see anyone's Instagram anymore. It's
Right.
just out of nowhere, I see that this artist commented on someone's post. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen this person's work in, geez, years, even though I follow them. And so I went to their page and I swear, the last few paintings they did look just like the painting I have of theirs. I mean, it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And when I look at this, I really see the evolution of a true artist. It's like,
that's what I love about this. That's
absolute. Look at the difference.
Well,
Three
thank you
clear
thank you.
stages.
Yes, think about the juxtaposition of those.
Yeah.
Right. And so the first one is of him learning to record honestly the differences in everything and struggling to hold it all together.
Yeah.
Right. And in that middle stage, he's combined unity and variety impeccably, and in a way that very close to a natural vision, the way we naturally see.
Mm-hmm.
But being who he was and being that he was evolving constantly, there was even a further dissolving of the form of and simplification. So the one with the sycamore at the end, it's a complete, you're looking at a life's journey here. And you see that giant mass of foliage punctuated by that beautifully drawn lightning strike of those branches. So you've got this spot of extraordinary delicacy being served by everything else in the picture.
Yeah, everything else is almost crude.
It's in service of. Now,
Right.
whether you like it or don't like it, to me, is that's irrelevant. What I love is that this guy just had to keep moving. Like, to him, it was what the picture doesn't need. And this is a really great example. And like I said, this is the forerunner of abstraction right here. His work was always, except for that very early period, ahead of the curve. And he's gotten rid of absolutely everything that he feels is unnecessary. Right.
Did
and
he bounce around at all, or is it a very linear path?
If you look at his work, you're going to see that the examples that I picked are a very good cross section of those periods of time.
So it is
life.
very linear. He's not bouncing around. Okay.
No.
Dang, dude, that's wild. This is this could be painted today.
That's what I mean. It's very fresh.
Yeah.
It has the truth of a lifetime of study, right? Combined with those subjective choices where he's saying, I don't need all this in there. This is all I need to say this thing. And so that's what I admire so much about Inness. There's this, like I said, this search for truth, and then this saying, well, what does the picture need? What doesn't it need? And then you could see him just through this last hour and a half we've been talking. You could see the machinations of what he went through creatively and intellectually and viscerally. And this is a very visceral painting, right? The first one is more intellectual, more thought out, more controlled. And then you see, that the work of somebody. I always think about The Unfinished Slaves by Michelangelo or Rembrandt's last self-portraits, which I've gotten a chance to see. And the poignancy in those portraits, a broken life, a broken man, right? And there's nothing left to prove. It's an old man with nothing left to prove, telling the world what he loves.
Hmm.
And that's what Michelangelo did with The Unfinished Slaves. That's what we're seeing here, I believe, with that painting.
I bet you money that if he had lived 50 years earlier, this evolution would have looked a lot different. Because with what you said about his attitude toward photography, how photography it basically creates the landscape better than he ever could. And it's almost as though by the time he gets to this point, he's just thrown his hands in the air and saying, why am I spending so much time trying to make a tree look like a tree when I can make the paint so beautiful
and feel like a tree
and still feel like a tree? Yes.
Right.
Because he's layering. Like, look at the layering of paint on this one on the left.
Yeah.
Compared to the tedious brushwork on the right.
Well, the one on the right, he's like an accountant, like a bean counter.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
He gets paid by the leaf,
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I think he hit his stride. I still think that he hit his stride on the middle one, though.
Man, a lot of people feel that way.
Where is that one?
As I get older, the Catskill Mountains is one you're referring to.
Yeah,
actually, Autumn Oaks was done around the same time too, and that has the same kind of balance of that.
I don't know. I love the latter one too, though. I'm kind of torn.
The longer you look at the later one, the more you study, and the older you get, the more you're going to love that one.
I don't know. I'm torn between the last two, but definitely not number one. I mean, I think he really hit something with these last two periods.
Well, poetry, how do we say that? I think poetry rarely happens when you're holding your breath. You got to let go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the risk. A felt mark requires risk, right? The smaller the mark, the smaller the range of motion, the more controlled something is, the less apt it is to have any feeling in it. Very hard to, one of the things I think about all the time and I work on with students is I say, don't build up a large shape with a whole bunch of small ones. You can use a large mark to cover a large area, do that. Large marks, mid-sized marks, small marks, all in service of saying something, right? It's the creeping is a byproduct of fear, and we all have it, and the not knowing and the not trusting. Inness had a big pair of cojones on him. I mean, he flew in the face of everybody after a certain period of time with his work. He knew who he was. There's a great quote from the beat poet Charles Bukowski, and I always think of my dad when I think of this quote, but Inness certainly fits the bill as well. He said, "I never met another man I'd rather be, and if that's a delusion, then it's a good one." And I think that kind of sums up Inness. Yeah. He absolutely was totally his own artist. And I love anyone who cuts their own path, whether I like or don't like what they're doing. I love that somebody has the courage to walk a path that they feel called to walk upon, creatively. It's powerful.
Yeah. You know what, though? There's been I agree with you 100%, but I think you'd agree with me if I add this little twist to it. And that is, there's a lot of ugly things that have come out of risk. And I think risk without skill or training or years of careful observation is just that. It's just a risk. Yeah, but
but you're being either or again. This is
Well,
the
like,
second
let me
or
just
third
finish
time.
this analogy. Like take the Olympics. You get a figure skater, someone who wants to be a figure skater but never learns to skate and tries a backflip. Like that's disastrous. And I think the reason he's successful taking risks is because he's got such a strong foundation.
Well, I don't think that's. I think respectfully, that's self-evident.
Yeah.
I'm not putting you down when I say that. I
Yeah.
think I understand that. But what I'm saying is that there's a point with anything where I think as the more self-conscious we get about being looked at, the safer people have a tendency to be. Right? That's why kids run around and act like idiots and don't give a shit. And they're having a great time, and why we love looking at it. Right? There's this kind of unconscious, unselfconscious joy. And I think that's possible, but not without risk as we get older.
No, I agree with that. Absolutely.
And so that's all I'm saying, Jeff. It doesn't, I'm not saying throwing paint around. Anybody can throw paint around. Right. But that's why I mentioned Sargent. People copy a Sargent and really in a very lame way often copy the bravura mark without the subtlety that carries it.
Oh,
right?
without the background that made it possible for him to do it.
His foundation of color and value, right? I mean, his teacher basically said that when they were painting the head, they had to paint patches of color and value. They were not allowed to soften an edge between them until they were all relating perfectly. Right. So the forehead, and then against the side of the forehead, the eye socket and the cheek, everything had to be considered. They were not allowed to soften their way out of a problem. And so and the risk that comes with understanding, and that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't happen if you don't push for it.
No, you have to. Yeah. And just to be clear, I wasn't speaking to you. I'm just speaking my thoughts. I know we agree on this.
Yeah, no.
It brings me back to college. I remember sitting in a classroom. My teacher, I don't even remember where my teacher was, but I just remember all of us sitting around this center model stand, and there was some sort of still life or something set up, and we're all painting, and this dude next to me is just painting by smearing his hands around and smearing them into the paint and smearing them all over the canvas, and also having a conversation with the people to his right, and not even looking at what he's doing. And I remember at one point having a conversation with him and saying, so tell me a little bit about, I don't remember exactly how it went down, but I asked him about what he was doing. And he said, well, I've tried the realism thing and kind of gotten it down, and I'm just getting bored of it,
Gotten it down.
Yeah, he had it down. Yeah, and he's bored of it now. So now he's just smearing his hands around and looking at the sky while he's doing it. And it's just, and I know that's not what you're talking about. I know it's not.
No.
But I just think that there's just this part of the art world that when they hear the word risk, that's what they think about, right? And maybe that's who I'm talking to. It's like, yeah, obviously there's a limit to that risk, right? You're not going to take risk if you don't have the background and the foundation to direct those risks. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster.
There's naive risk and there's informed risk.
Right.
Right. And I think that's one of the reasons they I just saw a meme recently, and it was one of the playgrounds that like I grew up in the early 70s, the late 60s, with the, giant swings with the, asphalt, parking lot, and, the whole, and these things were about having you understand risk, not just to play, but that there's measured risk attached to things. And now the playgrounds, everything is wrapped in rubber, and
it's so sad.
Well, I saw a kid in my neighborhood. This was what the kind of the height of it, that I just thought, oh, that's poor kid for the rest of his life. He was driving one of those little tiny electric cars, for a little kid, and it was going about a half a mile an hour. It was going, and he's wearing a helmet.
I you freaking kidding me?
No, his parents put a helmet
Oh
on.
my
And I'm
gosh.
so I just thought, wow, if that's where we are. But anyway, when it comes to the painting, like to me, at some point, if you don't imbue some risk into your work, you're never going to go past wherever you're at. And one of the ways you could do that is you exhale into the mark. You don't hold your breath, because you can't exhale and control at the same time.
Is that a metaphor or literal?
It's literal. It's a fact.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the few things I learned in yoga.
Really? Because it sounds like a great metaphor too.
Well, it is. It's absolutely true,
Yeah.
And so when I taught gesture figure, I'd have people that were real control freaks, and I'd say, try to find the long line from the top of the forehead that goes down the front of the figure all the way down the extended leg. Find the longest line, angle the head, angle the shoulders, angle the hips, the longest collective line, and then find the line that immediately is opposing that. And if you place those lines exactly where they need to be, everything else will fall into place. But the only way you can do that is to exhale into the mark, because most people, when they draw, they start with this and they go to this and they go to this. By the time they get down to the bottom, the figure is 12 heads tall and all been micromanaged. Right. But there's but risk. Some people have a real hard time with risk, and that's an internal issue. It's not something you can necessarily will your way through. And I think certain approaches to painting are very attractive to people that are very control oriented. Right. And so you can hide behind correctness too. And I'm not saying you per se, I'm just saying anyone can hide behind correctness.
Right.
And allow that your hand to creep and creep and creep and creep until something is done. Right. It's like you just keep creeping up on it. But, it's kind of like the difference between poetry and prose, right? And if you look at the way Shishkin painted or Levitan painted, one's a poet, and the other's is writing prose. Shishkin put in everything, every little piece of sphagnum moss is in the damn painting. But somehow he still holds it together. And then you look at Levitan and he's eliminated all of the non-essential stuff in many cases. And he gets a totally different result. So the thing about Inness is I love the risk and care. I love the fiery nature combined with the thoughtfulness. It's the coexistence of those two things are what make his work, combined with his endeavoring to find pure spirit when he painted, pure emotion, right? And being governed by that and letting his hand be driven by that, to me, intellect and emotion, an intellectual mark is a very different one than one that's felt and experienced through feeling. And I would take an incorrect felt mark over one that's been intellectualized over and is photographically correct any day.
That's making me so excited to paint today. That's good. That's good. You just energized me, man. I'm gonna get out there and
go get it.
Go get it today, dude. Seriously, man. Thanks for doing this. I got a question for you. If you were to do it again, who would you do? Who's another favorite? You mentioned Levitan a couple times.
I love Levitan. Absolutely adore Levitan. I adore Hopper. I adore Bellows.
Okay.
I adore Whistler, but all for different reasons.
All right, I'm gonna be bugging you again. Hope you don't mind.
Okay. You got it, pal.
Dude, because I got to thank you again. I mean, people like you have made this podcast what it is. So you're a stud, dude. Thanks for doing it.
Honored to be here. And I just always love visiting with you, man. And great observations, great questions. You make it an enjoyable conversation. So
thanks, man.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you next time.
You bet.
Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.